Alright. Okay. This hand lotion that I'm using doesn't work, you know? I put on so much of it and still my hands are cracking apart, and like it's already like hot outside. Like I don't know why this happens. I have no clue. The hand lotion must work. Friends, I'm back downstairs again. You can see we have laundry baskets here in the background. Do you guys like it with the laundry baskets or without the laundry baskets? I imagine that the podcast people probably don't really care that much, but alright. Well, okay, a little laundry. Never hurt anybody. I can't say that for sure. Alright. Well, friends, welcome back to Babylon Talmud today. We're studying Daf Pevav, Daf 86 of Masechta Yevamos, friends. We're talking about that. 86 talks about Truma Meiser. Relatively interesting stuff, if I could say. Let's go weiter. So we're on Daf. Maybe relative is the key, but I'll go upon him. It's not Perika oral, so that's all right. So Daf Pei Amud Bey is at the Mishnah, towards the bottom, about like 3-4 lines before it gets wide, towards the bottom. Bas Yisrael, whoa, gebaldig, a daughter of an Israelite daughter. All right, Bas Yisrael. Moresas l'kohen, who is engaged to a kohen. Okay, muberes mikohen, or pregnant from a kohen. Shemeres yavam l'kohen, or she's awaiting yibum to a kohen. V'chein bas kohen l'Yisrael. Similarly, a bas kohen who normally would be able to eat truma, but is now engaged, betrothed to an Israelite, lo socha b'truma. In any of these cases, she would be unable to eat truma. Bas Yisrael, Moresis LeLevi. Okay, now what if you have a Bas Yisrael? She's engaged to a Levi, Uberis Milevi, or pregnant from a Levi. Shomeres Yovam LeLevi, awaiting Yibum to a Levi, Mechim Bas Levi Yisrael, or a Bas Levi who is married to an Israelite, Lo Tochal B'Meiser. She cannot, in any of these cases, they cannot eat Meiser. Now, the first thing the Gemara is going to ask is like, why the heck not? Okay. Bas Levi Meoreses L'Koyin. So if you have a Bas Levi Meoreses L'Koyin, who is engaged to a Koyin, Uberes Mikoyin, pregnant from a Koyin, Shomeres Yovim L'Koyin, awaiting Yibum to a Koyin, B'chein Bas Koyin LeLevi, or similarly, a Bas Koyin who is betrothed to a Levite, lo socha lo betrume v'lo b'meiser. She cannot eat trume or meiser. So trume, of course, because only bas koins can eat trume, but like a bas levi who's engaged to a kohen or something cannot eat trume. And meiser, the Gemara is going to explain. Friends, I'm back downstairs again. You know, yeah, I'm back in the basement for probably a few weeks or something. So we'll see. Yeah. Let's go right. Friends, who can tell me what the question is? The question is, as I said a minute ago, who the heck cares that non-Levim are allowed to eat meiser? It's not like truma, right? Truma has to be eaten by a kohen. If a non-kohen eats truma, if it's by accident, so you have to pay it back plus a fifth. If it's on purpose, so then misa b'dei shamayim, it's a big deal. But a meiser, anybody can eat meiser. Meaning you give it to the Levi, but anybody can eat meiser. So milo achla b'meiser, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shmuel, Hamoni, Rav Meir. The Amar Meiser Rishon also l'zorim. So this is the opinion of Rav Meir, who actually holds that meiser does in fact need to be eaten by the Levi. Non-Levim cannot eat meiser. Titania, as we learn in a Braise, Trume lekoyin umaiser rishon lelevi. The Rav Meir says, Rav Meir, that Trume goes to the koyin and Meiser Rishon goes to the Levi, and this is talking about eating as well, that Truma is eaten by Kohanim, Meiser Rishon is eaten by Levim, not by non-Levim. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Matira lekoyin. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that Kohanim are permitted to eat Meiser. Matira Michlal De'ika Manda also. One second, what do you mean? Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, who interestingly enough was a kohen, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that it's permitted for a kohen to eat Meiser. Now the Gemara asks, would anybody disagree with that? Of course Kohanim can eat Meiser. Kohanim are also come from Levi. Kohanim are also referred to as Leviim. They're a special kind of Levi. But certainly a kohen would be able to eat Meiser. So Ela Ema Nosno Af LeKohen means you can even give Meiser to a kohen. We're going to see an interesting Gemara later on about a certain enactment at a certain point in our history where Davka, there was a takana to only give Meiser to Kohanim and not to Leviim. We're going to see a little bit later. So that's what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, that you can even give Meiser to a kohen. My time to Reb Meir. How come Reb Meir says that Meiser must be eaten by a Levi? Right, and non-Leviim are unable to eat Meiser. The Rav Acha ber Derave had a tradition dating back all the way to Reb Meir himself regarding how come he says that Meiser must be eaten by Leviim, cannot be eaten by non-Leviim. Because it says in the context of Meiser, it refers to the Meiser that is separated as Trume. What does that mean? It means that we're comparing Meiser to Trume. Ma Trume asur l'zarim, af Meiser Rishon asur l'zarim. That just like Trume, of course, cannot be eaten by non-Kohanim, so Meiser as well is unable to be eaten by non-Leviim. Ima Trume chayav an olav miso v'chomesh, af Meiser chayav an olav miso v'chomesh. Ho 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 ho. Ha ha. Friends, what's the kasha? Well, of course, Trume, if you eat it, if a non-kohen eats Trume on purpose, if a non-kohen eats Trume by accident, so then he has to pay back the value of the Trume that he ate plus a fifth. So if that's the case, then I should say the same thing by Meiser. If a non-Levi eats Meiser, so then he should, if it's on purpose, he should be in big trouble. If he should be chayiv v'misa b'dei shamayim. If he eats it by accident, he should have to pay it back plus a fifth. So Omer Kra umesubo ki chalalu v'yosef chamishiso alav. It says by Trume that, let's go weiter, bo v'lo b'meiser, that davke Trume yichayiv misa b'dei shamayim, not meiser, olav v'lo meiser, and if you eat it by accident, so you have to pay a fifth alav on it, on Trume, not on Meiser. V'Rabbanon, and the rabbis who say that non-Levim are permitted to eat Meiser, ma Truma toveles af Meiser Rishon nami tovel. So what they learn out from the pasuk of Kias Meiser b'nei Yisrael yarim l'Hashem Trume, from what they learn out from the comparison of Meiser to Trume, right? Reb Meir learned out that just like Truma has to be eaten by Kohanim, also Meiser has to be eaten by Levim. The Rabbanan say that no, non-Levim are permitted to eat Meiser. So then, what do they do with the comparison of Meiser and Trume? So the Rabbanan ma Trume toveles. I think I already read that, but I'm going to read it again. Just like Trume is goes to the mikveh. I'm kidding. Af Meiser Rishon nami tovel. Also Meiser Rishon is tovel. What does that mean? I'm joking. Meiser doesn't go to the mikveh. It was a good joke. I was trying to be funny, by the way. Yesterday I was trying to be funny, not in Babylon Talmud. I don't try to be funny on Babylon Talmud because that's not true. I do try to be funny. I do try to be funny on Babylon Talmud. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So, anyways, so yesterday I was trying to be funny. I was in a groove, and I was trying to be funny in the groove, and I was experimenting, and I expressed that I learned a lot. That was meant to be funny, but it wasn't. Let's go weiter. So, right. So, the rabbis. So they learn, what do the rabbis learn? Who could tell me what the rabbis learned? Oh, what, now I have to use my brain? Hate using my brain. It's not true, I like using my brain. No, but seriously, what are we talking about? Right, the comparison between Meiser and Trumah. So what do the rabbis do with the comparison between Meiser and Trumah? So, they say like this, that, well, of course we know about Tevel. Tevel is untied foods, right? Untied like produce and stuff. So, at what point does it become tied, right? At what point if you eat it, Tevel, you're chayav misabidei shamayim, I believe. If you eat Tevel, you're chayav, I think misabidei shamayim. It's either that or kares, but I think misabidei shamayim. Anyways, at what point is it after you separate Trumah? At that point, if you already separated Trumah and then you ate this produce, are you good to go, or is it still considered Tevel? So we're saying that, just like it'll be Tevel, until you separate Trumah, so then also it's going to be Tevel until you separate Meiser as well, right? That just like Trumah is important in the context of unteveling, so also Meiser is important in that context as well. So let's read it inside. Rabbanon matrume toveles af meiserishon nami tovel. The rabbi said just like truma is you have to separate truma, and until you separate truma it's tevel. Also until you separate meiser it is tevel. Yeah, I think I mentioned in the past. My mom thinks I'm not funny. I think I've probably mentioned that a lot of times, and she's right. Uchdetanya Rabbi Yossi Omer says Rabbi Yossi Yochol lo yehei. I don't know, I shouldn't really get into this. But she's also not right. I don't know. It's complicated. Tanya. Rabbi Yossi Omer says Rabbi Yossi. Is it possible that you're only chayav for eating tevel if like no tithes whatsoever have been separated? But but maybe already once I separate truma gedola, once I separate truma, but even if I haven't yet separated Meiser Rishon, maybe that would be untevel. Meiser Rishon v'lo Meiser Sheni, or maybe once I separate Meiser Rishon, even though I didn't separate Meiser Sheni, it's untevel. If I feel Meiser Oni, or maybe do I also need to separate Meiser Oni? Minayin, how do I know all this time? Well, it says in the context of, I believe Meiser. One second. What's the puzzle? I think I was talking about Meiser. Oh, one second. No, it's talking about Meiser Sheni. And it also says and that I think is talking about Meiser. So Masharecha Amr Lahalon, just like when it says Sharecha, in the second case, that's talking about Meiser Ani. Wow. Friends, this is embarrassing. Should we read this again? Let's back up a few lines. It says you can't eat in your where you live. You have to go to Yerushalayim, right? So that's talking about Meiser Shenu. It says by Meiser Ani that all these people will eat and be satisfied. So also by the tithes it's talking about Meiser Ani to the extent that Meiser Ani needs to be included in the tithes, and until then it is tevel and it says that you cannot eat it. Okay, so where the heck are we? So we see from this brisa with Rabbi Yossi that you have to separate all of these tithes, Trumah, Meiser Sheni, Meiser Ani. Until you do these things, so then it is going to be considered tevel. So okay, fine. So we learn out from this kind of like Gezer Shava thing. And what about? But we also had that pasuk earlier about Kes Meiser Bnei Yisrael Asher Yarimu Lashem Truma, where we compare Meiser to Truma, to say that just like Truma makes, you have to separate Truma, you also have to separate Meiser in order to untevel it. So V'imei Hasam Hava Amina Lilav Avamisalo. So if we would only have this pasuk of that it says, sharecha in both places, and it says lo suchal, that you're not allowed to eat it. So that's just a lav. How do we know that you're actually going to be chayiv? Right, that there's actually going to be a chiyuv misa involved if you don't separate meiser. So therefore we compare it to Truma to say just like you chayiv misa for that. So also if you don't separate Meiser, Kamash Malon, Lishna Achrino, that those is like a different way of saying it. Meiser Rishon, Ditovil, Midov Yosi Nafka. We ask according to the rabbis, right? We say, hey, how come you're learning out from the pasuk of Kies Meiser Ben Yisrael Asher Yerimu Lashem Truma, the pasuk that compares Meiser to Truma? What about the Brisa of Rabbi Yossi? So well, if we only have the Brisa of Rabbi Yossi where it says Lo Suchal Havamina Lelav, I would say that's just that that if you don't separate Meiser, so you'll be over on a lav. Aval Misa Lo, but you wouldn't be chayiv Misa Kamashman. Therefore, we have that other pasuk that compares Meiser and Truma to say that just like by Truma you'd be chayiv Misa for Tevel unless you separate Truma, so you'd also be chayiv Misa for Tevel only if you if you don't separate Meiser. I.e., you have to separate Truma, Meiser Sheni, Meiser Oni, Givaldik. Oh, I just remembered something. I didn't. Let me check up on that. Are they? Right, there was this guy, I think he was like moving or something. Whatever, this is separate, but I should really check in because I thought maybe I'll do something, but I probably won't. Let's go find her. Where are we? But Mayu Kimto, Reb Meir, so 1 second. So we're saying that this Mishnah is Reb Meir, right? Because the Mishnah had said that a Bas Yisrael who's engaged to a Levi cannot eat Meiser. The question is why anybody can eat Meiser. He said, no, this is according to Reb Meir who says that only Levim can eat Meiser. So 1 second. So Gemara came to Reb Meir. So we're saying that this Mishnah is Reb Meir Ema Seifa. What if we go weiter in the Mishnah? Bas Levi Maresas LeKoin. If you have a Bas Levi who's engaged to a Kohen, Uvas Kohen LeLevi. Or if you have a Bas Kohen who's engaged to a Levi, Lo Socha Lo B'Trume V'Lo B'Meiser. It says that they cannot eat Truma or Meiser. So now, what's the problem over here? Meaning, if you have a Bas Kohen is allowed to eat Truma. If she's now engaged to a Levi, so she should at least be able to eat Meiser. Right? She's not, right? Why shouldn't she can even eat Truma when she's in her father's house? She's a Bas Kohen. Now she gets engaged to a Levi, so he can eat Meiser. She should be able to eat Meiser as well. I mean, she's from the Levite sort of fold. So, what's the dealio? So Rav Sheshes, my eno ocheles. So Rav Sheshes says, yeah, well, what does it mean that she doesn't eat Meiser? The katani eno nosenes v'shus l'strom. It means that she can't, send a messenger to separate Meiser and Trumas Meiser for her betrothed Levite fellow guy, betrothed person, engaged fiance. That. So, right, so if you have this, so what it means is when it says that if you have a Bas Kohen who's engaged, who's betrothed to a Levi, she cannot eat Meiser. It doesn't mean that she can't eat Meiser. She can eat Meiser, according to Reb Meir. However, what it means is that she can't send a messenger to separate the Meiser for her husband until they are married. So does that imply that once they're married, then she can? And yes, that's true. Tanya, as we learn in the Brisa, also that you can eat truma in any place, you and your household. That once they are married, she can send a messenger to separate the meiser. To separate the meiser. Fine. Ata Omer Rishus Listrom Weinu Ela Le'echol. 1 second. So you're saying that we're talking about that she doesn't have permission to send a messenger to separate the meiser, but Weinu Ela Le'echol. Maybe what it's talking about to actually eat the meiser, right? So meaning, so once they're married, she'd be able to eat meiser, right? So we had just said that this pasuk of Achatam Osu B'Chomokom Atam V'Veischem teaches that once they are married, right, that once a woman is married to a Levite, she can, send somebody to separate, Trumas Meiser from her husband's Meiser. But maybe it's talking about that once they're married, she could eat Meiser. So I'm like, Truma Chamura Ocheles Meiser Akalo Koshaken. Well, if when she's married to a Kohen, she's allowed to eat Truma, which is more stringent than Meiser, then certainly if she's married to a Levite, she can eat Meiser, which is less stringent. Rather, it teaches that a woman who is married to a Levite would be able to send somebody to separate Meiser and Trumas Meiser from her husband's stuff. Marbe de Ravna, Omer says, Marbe de Ravna, Lo Mar She'ein Cholkin Lo Meiser Beveis Hagronis, that what's the Mishnah saying when it says that she's not allowed to eat Meiser, right? That if you have a Bas Kohen married to a Levite, she cannot eat Meiser. It means that she doesn't go to pick up her fiance's Meiser for him, right? The people give 10% of their stuff to Levites. She cannot go on her own to pick that stuff up when they are engaged. So okay, I understand if the reason is because of yichud, that we don't want this engaged woman to be with another fellow. So ella lamanda amar mishum grusha. But if we're saying that the reason why she shouldn't go alone in order to pick up the Meiser is because we're concerned that, well, what if she gets divorced? That the concern is that if when she is married or engaged, you're gonna be giving her truma or Meiser, so then they might end up giving it to her as well, even if she gets divorced. Well, then Bas Levi Milo Ochla B'Meiser. Well, then if she's the daughter of a Levi, she was able to eat Meiser anyways, right? Grusha Bas Kohen, right? So meaning, right? If we're talking about, if we're talking about that, we're concerned that she's not going to go and chaparain, Meiser on her own, because we're concerned that if she gets divorced, but even if she gets divorced anyways, she was still able to eat Trume, right? Bas Levi Milo Ochla B'Meiser. If she's the daughter of a Levi, then wouldn't she be able to eat Meiser anyways, even if she gets divorced? But one second, I could say the same thing about a grusha of a Bas Kohen, right? That if she gets divorced, she could still eat Truma, and yet we say that she still doesn't go to pick up the Truma or the Meiser of her person who she's engaged to or married to. Rather, the point is that we're concerned about a Bas Yisrael. That if you have a Bas Yisrael who is engaged to a Levi or a Kohen, and she's going to go and chaparain the Meiser or the Truma for him, well, they're yelling upstairs. And then if she goes and picks up the Truma, then if she gets divorced, they might continue giving it to her, and that's going to be a problem if she's a Bas Yisrael, and therefore make a Gzeira for the Bas Levi and the Bas Kohen also regarding them. So, but if that's the case, then why is the Mishnah specifically talking about a woman who's engaged? It should even be if she's married. We should still be, right? The same divorce issue would be whether she's engaged or whether she's married. So I did the Tanareshi Moresis, Tananami Sefer Moresis. Well, since the first part of the Mishnah was talking about when they're engaged, to say, for example, a Bas Kohen who is engaged to a Yisrael, so she can no longer eat Truma, and that's even if she's just engaged. So therefore, in the end, we also talk about engagement, even though, it's true that if we're saying that she shouldn't go and pick up, the Truma or the Meiser for her fiance, it could theoretically be talking about if they're married also, but because the first part of the Mishnah was talking about engaged, so the second part of the Mishnah talked about engaged as well. Taner Rabbanan the Rabbi start Truma LaKoyin Meiser Rishon LaLevi Divrei Rabbi Akiva. So it says Rabbi Akiva that Truma, of course, goes to the Kohen, but it says Rabbi Akiva that Meiser Davka has to go to the Levi. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Omer says Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, the Kohen, that Meiser goes to a Kohen. The Kohen below the Levi? One second. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, are you saying that Meiser goes to the Kohen and not to the Levi? No. He's saying Meiser can even go to the Kohen. My time with Rabbi Akiva, how come Rabbi Akiva says that Meiser Davka has to go to the Levim? Is the pasuk says Levim tadaber v'amarta aleim, that say to the Levim, Levim kamishto ikra, that the pasuk that talks about Meiser is Davka talking about Levim. So therefore Meiser has to go to the Levim. V'idach kidur b'shuv ben Levi, and the other opinion, the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, who says that you can even give Meiser to Kohanim, is like Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Damar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Besim va'arba mikomis Nikru Kohanim Levim, that there are 24 places where priests are called Levites. And this is one of them, the Kohanim who are the Levites, the sons of Tzaddik. The sons of Tzaddik were Kohanim, yet and they're being referred to as Levim. So we see that Kohanim are also referred to as Levim, and therefore, if Levim can eat Meiser, so then Memele, Kohanim can eat Meiser Oichet. Rabbi Akiva, says Rabbi Akiva, yeah, but you cannot say though that Kohanim are allowed to eat Meiser. Dichsiv, the pasuk says, V'achaltem also b'chol makom, that you have to be able to eat Meiser anywhere. Right? You have to be able to eat Meiser anywhere, even in a cemetery. And Kohanim cannot go into cemeteries, so Memele, Meiser is not for them. V'idach, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah would say, he was saying you can eat it anywhere, that meaning you don't have to eat it in Yerushalayim, and you can even eat it when you're Tameh, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be able to eat it in a cemetery, and therefore, says Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, even Kohanim would be able to eat Trumah, Meiser. There was a certain garden, field, orchard, something that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah who was a kohen. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was a kohen, and he would chaparain the Meiser Rishon from there. Also, Rabbi Akiva hadra the pische levei kaver. So Rabbi Akiva went and he basically made sure that the entrance to this garden would dafka be opposite a graveyard, so that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah would be unable to continue to collect Meiser there. Omar Akiva b'tarmilov anor chaya, to which Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, He says, Rabbi Akiva has his pouch, and I'm going to live. What that means is Rabbi Akiva was at one point the shepherd of Kalbo Savua. He ended up marrying Kalbo Savua's daughter. He was at one point a shepherd, and they would have like a pouch that he would put like bread in and things like that. Elazar ben Azariah was basically saying, Rabbi Akiva, leave me alone. You and your pouch. I'm gonna do other things. Itmar was stating, Pneima konsu levim b'meiser. Friends, do you hear this? Now, I'll tell you a meiser. I was in Groove the other day, I think just this week, I think maybe 2 days ago or something, and Rabbi Avram, there's a groover named Rabbi Avram, and he was learning Masechta Meiser Sheni, I believe, and he asked me a kasha on this Mishnah, that there was a fine, during the days of Ezra, there was a fine against the Levim that said that you don't give Meiser to the Levim, instead you give it to the Kohanim. And it sounded like a very interesting thing. And here we are, Davka on Dav Pei Vav Masechta Yevamos, learning this very Mishnah. Unbelievable. Mamash like 2 days after he asked the Shaila. So, anyways, so says the Gemara, Mipnei Konsu Levim b'Meiser. How come there was a knas against the Levim when it came to Meiser? Pligi bar Rabbi Yonasan v'Savya. There's a machlokus between Rabbi Yonasan and Savya. One opinion is, well, because they didn't make Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael during the time of Ezra. During the time of Ezra, when the Yidden were coming back to Eretz Yisrael, they didn't come, so therefore they got in trouble, and they said, okay, well, you no longer get the Meiser, the Kohanim do. The Chacham say Kadesh Yismchu Kohanim Olav B'mei Tumas, and the Chacham, which I guess Savya, I guess is like the Chachamim, the elders. So they say, well, by giving the Meiser to the Kohanim, then the Kohanim will have what to eat when they are Tameh. So I understand, according to the opinion, that we're punishing them for not making Aliyah during the time of Ezra. So, that's why we're finding them. They didn't make Aliyah, therefore we say, well, if you're not going to make Aliyah, you're not going to get the Meiser, instead the Kohanim are going to get it. But according to the opinion that it's so that the Kohanim will have what to eat when they're Tameh, what? Just so that that the Kohanim will have something to eat, the Levim have to lose their Meiser? No, so rather everybody agrees that the fine is a punishment for not having made Aliyah during the time of Ezra. So when the Yidden were coming back to Eretz Yisrael, the Levim didn't come, so they got in trouble, and therefore the takana was to give the Meiser to the Kohanim instead. This is the machlokus between the two opinions. Ma'asaver knosa la'aniyim, ma'asaver kohanim bimei tumason aniyim ninu. right? So, meaning everyone agrees that the reason why the Levium no longer were receiving the Meiser was because they did not come to Eretz Yisrael during the time of Ezra. That's for sure. Now the question is, so then what do you do, right? So if you're not giving the Meiser to the Levium, so then who does it go to? So one opinion is that, well, it goes to the Aniyim, it goes to poor people. The Knas is that you can either give your Meiser to Levium, or you can give it to poor people, but the Levium don't have the exclusive rights to it anymore. Or in the other opinion is that, well, you give it to Kohanim, because Kohanim, when they are Tameh, they are considered poor. So now, even though in general we don't read the parentheses, for here, on this daf, for some reason we are reading the parentheses. So if we say that the reason for if we say that the knas is that you can either give Meiser to Levium or to poor people, so then I understand why Rabbi Akiva basically prevented Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah from collecting this Meiser, because Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was certainly not poor; he was extremely wealthy, and therefore Rabbi Akiva says, "You look, the knas was to give it to poor people. You're not poor." But if the enactment was that you can either give it to Levium or you can give it to Kohanim, well then Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is a Kohen. He should have been able to collect from collect Meiser from this field. So this is what Rabbi Akiva is saying to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Look, if you're coming to collect this Meiser because the Levium are fined and they don't receive the Meiser anymore, and it goes to Kohanim and you're a Kohen, so therefore you're collecting it, fine, givaldig. V'i causes b'toras chaluka, but Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, if you're coming to collect this Meiser because you hold that me'ikar adin Meiser can go to Kohanim, well then no, that's no good, and I'm going to force you to kind of have to go through a cemetery, which you're not allowed to do, and therefore you won't be able to chop it around. The Gemara wants to know, how do we know that the Levium did not come to Eretz Yisrael when the Yidden were making Aliyah during the time of Ezra? The pasuk says, and I gathered the people by the river that goes to Ahava, and we camped out there for 3 days. And the Kohanim and the nation were there, but the Levites were not there. Amr Chisda says, initially they would only make officers from the Levites. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, that the Levite officers are among you, or before you. Now the officers only come from Israel, from the Israelites, that the shochim from the majority are upon you, even the Israelites. Friends, that was Daf Peivav Masechta Yevamos. What I thought was interesting about Daf Peivav was how we relate to Meiser, right? In general, Meiser is able, right? We assume that Meiser doesn't have to be eaten by the Leviim, right? Whereas Trumah does have to be eaten by the Kohanim. Non-Kohanim are also from eating Trumah. Meiser has to be given to the Leviim, but it can be eaten by anybody. We saw the opinion of Meir, however, who says that Meiser Davka has to be eaten by Leviim. Meiser cannot be eaten by non-Leviim. Kohanim are considered Leviim. Well, so we saw that it was machlokas between Reb Meir and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah about what about with regards to Kohanim, right? Would Kohanim be able to accept the Meiser, right? So everyone seems to agree that Kohanim can eat Meiser, but can you give it to the Kohanim? Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says yes, whereas Reb Meir, and we saw later Rabbi Akiva, say no. We saw an interesting takana that when the Yidden came back to Eretz Yisrael from Bavel, so the Levim didn't come, and because of that they got fined that the Meiser doesn't go to them anymore. And it was machlokas who it goes to. Either it goes to poor people or it goes to Kohanim, so that they'll have food to eat when they are tummy. Friends, that was Peivav of Masechta Yevamos. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.